Hi, everybody. And this is the first of 7 archetype episodes, little short archetype episodes we're doing. And because they're so short, we're just going to jump right in. Miss Reba, will you tell us about the first archetype? I think it's
Yes.
the
So,
maiden archetype.
first of all, archetypal energies reside within all of us. And one that's really prominent, especially in US culture, I think, and a lot of maybe other cultures, I can't speak to that necessarily, is the maiden archetype. Or I think it's, I could be wrong, but I think it's also referred to as the innocent archetype. Because these are female archetypes that we're talking about. And these also reside within the male consciousness too, right? So maidens are usually like, if you want to think of, I guess her name is like, for frick's sake, I can still not think of this girl's name, Rapunzel, which is Rapunzel, but what is the movie called? It drives me crazy. Anyways,
I always
no,
thought it
there's
was
an there
Rapunzel.
they call
Is it
it
not?
Tangled. Oh my god.
Oh, Tangled.
Yes,
Yes.
see, you know what I'm
Yes.
talking
I
about.
love that movie.
But she is locked
I
in a
know exactly what you're
tower.
talking about.
She's at the whim of everyone else's desires, but she's like full of life and creativity and joyful and playful and very feminine too. Um, but she is
Hmm.
needing someone to save her sometimes. She is not necessarily the hero of her own story. Well, quite yet. She could be the hero of her own story. But maidens are I want to just like read it. Youthful, effervescent, and have a vital quality. They're usually like free-spirited. Um and every energy, every archetypal energy has a strength, and they also have what would we call it? I don't want to say it's a weakness because it's not a weakness. Like a difficulty. Yeah, it's
Maybe like a yin and a
yes.
yang, like
Yes.
two
Well, it's
sides
something
that
that
fit together.
the other side of the coin that doesn't necessarily serve us. Like the
I
qualities
see. Okay.
that
Okay.
can come about because of these natural tendencies. So when you're so free-spirited and kind of naive, and curious about your world, you don't have a lot of worldly experience necessarily. Um, or if you
Hmm.
do have experience, you haven't like cultivated it. Um, so the other side of the coin for maidens are they can be people pleasers, or they can be almost the victim of the villain in a story, or even for ourselves.
Hmm.
Yeah, they can be victims of a story. Um, they're just waiting for life to happen to them instead of being like, I'm gonna go do this.
I was just gonna say that. They're like in their innocence and naivete are just sort of waiting around for
Yeah, like
life to
what's gonna
happen
come
to
my
them, I
way,
guess,
which
instead of
can be great. There's a few things I want to get into this. So we can be in these maiden energies and these maiden archetypal energies throughout our lives. And sometimes this can be, we think of a maiden as a young unmarried woman who maybe hasn't had a lot of world experiences. Um, but that's not necessarily so, because we can be in those maiden archetypes or that energy throughout our lives and in different parts of our day, even where it's like, oh, I'm really curious and playful and joyful about these things. And I'm also like, it's like seeing the world through, I think of seeing the world through like my daughter's eyes right now, is that there's so much newness and there's so little real experience. I mean, not to say that they don't have experience and that they're only in the maiden archetype.
right.
Um,
They just have a little bit more
at least
innocence
for
than
a certain amount of time.
the rest of us.
Um, but I
Yeah,
think that that's the
right.
important
For
part,
now.
is that this maiden energy can come in throughout all times of life, and all it can carry through. And that doesn't mean that just because you're a young girl that you are always in a maiden archetype energy. So, like I kind of alluded to, my daughter Alexa is 15, and sometimes she is one of my best mentors. She is able to talk me through things. She's able to reflect and also be nurturing to even me, even though I'm her mother. So she can even have those mother energies towards me, or she can be the huntress where she's like, "Yeah, I do know what I want." I mean, she can change her mind, but just because of your age doesn't mean any of those things. Like, I feel like I was in the maiden archetype and in a strong energy way for a very long time in an unhealthy way for me. In that, yeah, and I think we've talked about this.
Yeah, I agree. You said people pleasing, and I
Yes.
was like, "Oh, shit.
Yeah. You're not
Not
talking
me."
about me.
I don't know who you're talking about, but it's not me.
Yeah,
I don't
and
do that.
so
No.
those people pleasing moments or letting life just happen to us, can happen for a long time. Not that, and that doesn't mean that it's bad. There can be moments, and that's what I think was so cool about archetypes is just being self-aware of, okay, am I being a am I doing this because I want to do it, or am I doing this because other people want me to do this? Is this because what I'm socially expected to do these things? Um, and then after being able to be aware of that and notice and being like, okay, what do I now need to do? Because I don't want to necessarily always do what people want me to do. You can bring in some of that huntress energy. You can bring in some of that sage or other energies that can help balance us out and propel us forward towards our goals. Like, maiden energy can be super useful for us to be curious and like about new situations, new and get us into those new life experiences because of our curiosity and playfulness. But, you know, w-
At some point, you need other archetypes
yeah,
to step in and take over. So it's a very like I'm as I'm learning about this from you, it seems very
yes.
very fluid from like this moment to the next. Not all circumstances, not all people, not all ages. I mean, it just seems like sometimes you need this kind of sometimes you need that curious energy, and then sometimes you need that mothering and nurturing energy. And so it seems like we can wear
And
multiple
but we
hats
do so
at the same time.
without in being conscious of it a lot of the time. And this is
Right, like, I'm trying to think about it, and I'm like,
like your face, right?
"Whoa,
Yes.
this is a lot."
Yeah, but I think that this is what's for me, why I wanted to learn more about archetypes is that first of all, I love figuring things out about myself. And not only that, but this is like a tool to
Mhm.
evaluate and then be like, okay, well, is this serving me in my journey?
Right, is this people-pleasing behavior? Like, is this maiden
Yeah.
energy
And not
serving me
only
in a
that,
good
but
way that
whenever
I'm
I
using?
am like, okay, I'm letting life just happen to me and I don't really want that to be happening right now. Who can I call on who has like serious huntress energy or queen energy? Who can I be like, hey, help me out of this moment in my life or this energy right now?
Pull
Or
me out.
can I bring, because all of these
Right.
archetypal energies are present within all of us. It's like, how can I bring
Mhm.
that queen quality into my life right now? Because I'm going to like step this shit up and be like, okay, maiden, you've served your purpose for today or in this moment. And now like queen's coming in to like get this shit done. And just being aware, it's another way to be aware of ourselves and our collective community. Because what I think is fascinating is we see these role models or these kinds of things in our lives. And for a lot of the time, like look at how movies are now changing, talking about Tangled or Frozen. Um, you see a lot of these maiden archetypal women becoming their own hero or the huntress or the queen.
Mhm.
and they're not necessarily
Right.
needing to rely on someone else.
Like my
Yes.
favorite movie, Moana.
Yes.
That's actually the perfect example of, being a maiden, channeling that huntress energy, getting out there, getting it done, and then, being owning who you are and
Yeah.
being that queen.
Yeah, me
Damn,
too.
I love Moana.
Me too, and I think that, you know, whenever we're watching those things, that is also why these stories matter, and who is creating these stories, and what are they telling us about ourselves, because they're like magnets, like we've talked about, like we're just magnetically like attuned to those kinds of stories because we see ourselves in them, in this big screen, in this big magnetized
Mhm,
way. And so it's important to be like, what am I putting into my body, my thoughts, my consciousness of who should I be, who do I want to be? And if I'm seeing maidens only be in this certain zone of, oh, I'm going to be saved and someone's going to take care of me. And instead of being like, okay, that can also happen, but you can be saved by yourself, or, a friend,
right.
or it doesn't have to be a guy on a horse. It can be a girl on a
A girl on a
horse.
horse, we're
It
very
can be
progressive here.
and that, and not to devalue that, because I do think maidens are usually one of the reasons that there are heroes, right? That someone steps up and says, "Fuck this shit, I'm gonna go help that person
Right,
over there." And we need heroes, and they serve a purpose.
right,
Um, but in some kind of balanced state. And I think that is a lot of this, is like trying to find the balance and then using these energies at the appropriate time. The times it's like, yes, we need this.
right, right. Needing the maiden for curiosity and then stepping in and being your own hero when the maiden's job is done,
Mhm.
or, whatever that looks like. I think there's value in having a community of people around you to bring that awareness and to help you maybe pull you into a different archetype. But I think, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is how I'm interpreting these archetypes, is I don't need anybody else. I have everything that I need inside of me. And it's just digging deep,
Mhm.
having the awareness first of all, and then knowing what you need, and then digging deep for that. And I think that's where like the
Magic
real
happens. Yeah. Where real work
the real
and magic
work.
happens.
Yeah, the mer
Yeah. And not only
right.
that, but
It's
I think
both.
that's why, again, going back to why we see these things and we're so magnetized to them in the real world or in stories, is that it gives us inspiration to be like, I can live this life and I can do that too.
Right. If she can do it and she's just like me, then I've got it somewhere
Yes.
inside of me. I just have to find
You have
it.
to cultivate it. And this can take practice. And first step is awareness, of course. So now, yeah.
Right. And that's why
how
we're
do we
here.
how do we bring this awareness to this beautiful maiden energy, and uh how do we help it be in a balanced state?
Right. And having
Mhm.
the awareness when it's, like you said, not in balance. When we're maybe we took our curiosity and zeal for life and now it's turned into um, people pleasing behavior and oh, I'm
Yeah.
bored. What with my life? What am I going to
Yeah.
do? I guess I'll just wait for something to happen. Right.
Yeah.
Instead of,
Yeah.
oh, I'll
But
do that. That
sometimes
sounds
I
nice.
do feel like it's very helpful for, if I'm in that maiden energy, to look to others and be like, "Hey, can you help guide me? Can you be a mentor to me?" Because I am in this transitional weird phase of, I want to be curious, I want to be joyful and playful, and I am sort of being that, but how do I now get to the next step? How do I cultivate this? I don't know, something else, like, but we need others to help us sometimes and guide us, hopefully in a way that necessarily doesn't make us feel pressured to please them, which I think is probably the opposite of like guidance.
Right.
It's finding the balance and knowing that they're not necessarily good or bad, but how can you use them as a tool to the best ability? Hmm.
For
Yes.
where you are, like, right at this moment. I like that it's not good or bad,
Yeah.
it's balance and out of balance. I like that there's no sort of negative connotation to the other side of that coin. It just is what it is. That, it's
Well,
people
and
pleasing
don't you,
behavior.
yeah, and don't you think that a lot of the
It
times
is what
we
it is.
learn best from it it happening to us? Where it's like, if I didn't, right? Like, so if I
Oh, yeah, for sure.
wasn't a people pleaser for so long and seeing the consequences of that, it may not have propelled me out of that journey. So,
So even then, people pleasing can
a source of
be
learning, a source of experience.
I don't want to right. I was going to say I don't want to say it's a good thing, but it's definitely, you I you know all right, Miss Reba, is there anything else that we need
Well,
to
I think one of
know
the fun
about the
things
maiden
that to
archetype?
think about is like who are maiden archetypes, energies that we see maybe like famous people are out in the world today. Like, we're talking about like Moana and Tangled and the Cinderella. Those are easy archetypes to label, right? But one of them that I think about
Mhm.
is Taylor Swift when she was young. And and how once Taylor Swift was like, I'm not a fucking maiden anymore. She became a part of her own story, and so seeing those archetypes and how people flow through those, and almost our society being like, hey, you're a maiden energy. Like, what are you doing trying to be a huntress or a queen? You know? So, like, I don't know. I'm just curious if
Right.
you can think of any other maidens that we might see out in the world. She's just kind of easy, I feel like, to say in that space. Um, I'm not really hip on a lot of people.
I think of a lot. I think I
Mhm.
just more think in reference to myself. How I was in my 20s versus how I am now. How I
Yes.
was before kids versus how I am now. Cuz kids we
Well,
grew up real
that leads
fucking
us
fast with
into what we're
kids.
going to talk about next is the mother archetype on our next podcast. So
Man,
you just totally did
I
it.
think that was a great segue and I didn't even mean to.
Yes, see?
Yes. I'm getting so good
Good
at
job. Pat yourself on
podcasting.
the back.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the mother archetype.